Welcome back to the NerdNest podcast. We've got four of us here today. I'm joined today we've got Russ and Rich and Carrie. Rich, how's it going today, man?
Pretty good. It's been a nice few days with the weather here in Maryland, so I'm having a good time with the kids, and it's been good. How are you?
We have had gorgeous weather this week. I work at a school, and we've been having lots of fire drills in the afternoon where we all go out, stand outside. And every single time I think to myself, I don't want to go back inside. It's too nice out here. Carrie, you have not had that experience lately, have you?
No, I didn't have it as bad as some of the pictures and stuff that were going around there. That was pretty gnarly. But I did have a number of leaks that I had to attend to. It was a downpour. We really got dunked on.
Jeez. Yeah, leaks, not like video game leaks, but like, water leaks.
It was we had to deploy 4 pans. But yeah, it wasn't great.
And, Russ gets the same weather every single day. It rains for about 15 minutes, and then it's beautiful. That's why it's called the Rainbow State. Am I wrong?
Yep. You are not wrong at all. I mean, like every 5 years, we have something bad happen, like a little earthquake or whatever. But yeah, it's wonderful. So no complaints here.
Earthquake.
That's all. Just NBD.
What is that? A little 3.3 on the Richter? No big deal.
Yeah.
A little earthquake. Well, listen, we're here to talk about video games, not earthquakes. So let's get ready to move on. But hey, we were just talking to Russ, and I want you to watch in Russ's background throughout the show. He's got a retro game playing on the TV in the background. As soon as you know the answer to what that retro game is, leave a comment down below on the YouTube channel, and at the very end of the show, I'll play some audio from that game as well for the audio listeners. And then we were talking before. I think this one's going to be pretty easy for most people. Carrie and I were able to guess it just by watching the screen. We haven't heard the song yet. I don't know how well Rich is going to do with this, but
it's Elden Ring, right?
yeah. It is absolutely. It's absolutely Elden Ring. We told Russ he's got to up his game, and he said, "Well, we'll play Stump the Chump if you want." So maybe next week. He'll make it a little bit harder for us, but we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. I'm just looking at the show notes. Okay, I want to start off by talking about the Legion Go. Who here ordered the Legion Go? Because I saw some tweets this morning. I did. Russ, did you order it?
I did. Yep.
And you said that you were being strategic with your order. Want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's the 512 and the 1 terabyte storage options, and there's only a $50 difference between the two, and it makes no sense to get the 512. You would just spend the $50, get the 1 terabyte. And so I figured everyone's going to get the 1 terabyte, and there might be supply issues. And so I bought the 512 because I was like, you know what? That's the one, that's the little black sheep, the ugly duckling. I'll buy that one, and then hopefully I will get it maybe a day earlier as a result. And so that's why I ended up spending, buying the one that made the least amount of sense, just so I could maybe get it a little earlier.
Spoilers, his is going to come a couple days later because he lives in Hawaii.
Right.
And cue the narrator from Arrested Development. He didn't. Carrie, which one did you order, man?
Also the 512. I didn't get it for any secret reasons. I just have way too many devices and way too many NVMe's, so there's zero reason I need any more space. I have literally 3 NVMe sticks right to my right over here that I could just sitting here. So I don't know what to do with them. They just kind of just sit. So I don't need storage. I just need to test out the thing, and that's the only reason that I got it.
Now the drive in that thing, it's not a 2230 like in the Steam Deck and in the ROG Ally. It's 2245. Am I right about 2280?
2280.
Yeah,
it's 2280. So it's a long one, right?
It's the normal stick.
Mm-hmm. Right, like in a
Are we sure?
I thought it was a 2240.
So there's
all right.
There's
Go
4
ahead,
sizes.
Rich.
There's 22.
I just remember some argument about people. I remember people being upset with the size that they chose, which would lead me to think that it's not the 2280, right? But I don't remember specifically what it was.
We're all Googling at the same time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I'm not touching my keyboard, but I'm watching all of you guys Google in real time. And
2242? 2242?
Yep.
Oh, 2242.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
right.
obscure.
So
Oh yeah.
does
right.
that change your math, Carrie?
No, I mean, I still have too many devices. It's not like I'm going to be using. Unless
that's
like
fair.
the Lenovo Legion Go is like, oh my god, this is so amazing that I just get to throw all these other things away. I don't anticipate that happening, so there's still no reason for me to get it. Funnily enough, the 2242 was first demoed in the GPD Win 2, although it was not NVMe, it was SATA, but still they used 2242 in the Win 2. So little fun fact.
Nice.
Awesome. I don't know if I asked you, Rich. Did you end up picking one up as well?
No, I didn't. I woke up and I saw that it was available for pre-order, and then I've just been like out all day. So I'll pre-order it later today and just kind of deal with the consequences of getting it later than everybody else. Did you see that it's also available for pre-order on Micro Center? So even on Micro Center you can buy it, which is pretty neat because I have one that's not too far from me.
Oh, that's awesome. So you could possibly walk into a store and buy one on day one.
For sure.
That's awesome.
One of the best things about Micro Center that I love, I actually got a 4090 on day one at a Micro Center, even though they've sold out everywhere. And that has to do with like how they don't sell things online and they kind of encourage people to come into the store.
Yep.
So it's like one of my favorite things about Micro Center, even though it's probably opposite of how most people are going to be doing shopping. But yeah, the Brooklyn Micro Center is actually pretty sweet.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I told my wife I bought it and I told her, I said, well, it's kind of expensive, but what I figured is I'm just going to buy it, and if it turns out that I don't like it, then I can just take it back to Best Buy. And that's one of the best things about these devices that actually have an
100%.
in-store footprint. Because if I didn't like it and I couldn't just walk into a Best Buy and say, give me my money back,
Right.
there's a whole process, and then I got to ship things. And it's not like when I buy something from Amazon and I don't like it, their return policy is ridiculously easy. So I really like that. Like, I feel like I'm okay taking a chance on this device. Whereas if it didn't have an in-store footprint somewhere near me, I wouldn't feel like, okay, I can take a risk, a $750 risk on this device. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. Like that's kind of my angle in buying this. Is like, okay, this thing's got 2 weeks to win me over, or it's going back, because I have so many other handhelds. Like, what are you going to do that's special to the point where I'm actually going to keep it? So,
Yeah.
And
same
you've
here.
been like fully sold on the Ally, right, Russ?
yeah, I mean, I've got 2 of them right now, and I've got the XG Mobile, and so
Yeah.
and my Steam Deck, obviously, and that's not to
Yeah.
mention all the other handhelds I mess around with. So,
Of course.
yeah, I'm invested in all of that stuff, and so yeah, this is that moment where the Legion Go needs to kind of step up and see what it can do.
Yeah.
It
that's fair.
absolutely does. Speaking of all these other handhelds, like we've got these. Some of them are handhelds, but are they really handhelds? Like, that's a question that I think that we need to ask. Like, I watched your video, Russ, about the name of this thing is terrible.
Oh, it's terrible.
The TJT109. It's like the name of a Terminator
Close.
or something.
Yeah, TJD is the name of the company, and then the device is called T101. And yeah, it sounds like
Okay.
Terminator.
So the T101, I saw your video and I was like, okay, it looks cool or whatever. And then you got to the part of the video where you stood up and were holding it like next to you in your hand. And I was like, oh my God, that thing is ridiculous. How do
Yeah,
you
it needs a
feel about
satchel.
that thing?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I knew, like, when they emailed and said, hey, we're going to send this thing, I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm going to make a ridiculous video, But once I actually got it in my hands, I was like, this 10 inches is not so bad. Like, it's good because you can hold it further away and still be able to, like, play with it. And so it's nice to be able to, like, actually rest on your lap and then, like, kind of use it like that, because it is pretty heavy. It's like 2.5 pounds. And then also, because the screen's so big, they've got room for a big battery. They've got room for big controls. And so it does feel very kind of luxurious. I just wish that, kind of the build quality was better. Again, it was an engineering unit, so I can't really like say if it's going to get better or worse. And then also, like, the controls didn't work on mine. Like, I spent like 3 days trying to get it to work. But essentially, the D-pad was just constantly firing up. And so their first email said, well, just take it apart and see if you can fix it. I'm like, no, that's your job,
That's right.
So I didn't even attempt that, especially because it's probably made with like hot wax and stuff inside, and so I didn't want to deal with any of that stuff. And so then I just turned it off within the device manager, and then it worked. And so then I ended up using everything with an external controller, which means I couldn't accurately judge the controls themselves. And so as much as I wanted to say this is a really neat experience, I couldn't. And so at that point, I was just basically playing on tablet PC. And yeah, the screen's big. It's way too big to be like portable in any way, but it was still kind of a fun experience to have something so massive.
And you had the grips too, right? Like the grips are massive.
Yeah, they're huge. They're like full size. I've had like I think some of you had like the AOK Zoe products, right? They have like really massive grips on them as well. These just like completely blow those out of the water. Like it's just full console size controls on a handheld PC. It's kind of crazy.
What were you saying, Rich?
So this is even bigger than the Neo Kun, right? Is the Kun?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Kun is like 8.5 inch.
Yeah, 8.4. I got the Kun the other day, and it's tiny. I'm like, oh, look at this little guy. Everyone else is like, it's so big, and I'm like, oh, look at this little guy. And so
yeah,
I'll do some size comparisons on the Kun, which I'll probably review in the coming week. So.
That's great. And then the PlayStation Portal is another one, right? It's not 8.4, it's not 10 inches, but it's 8-inch screen with those big DualSense grips. So that's going to be another big one.
I think a lot of people, especially those who aren't like us, who have actually like held a bunch of these, they're going to be really surprised at that price or the size. They're going to, have pre-ordered it or whatever and be like, oh yeah, it's like a little like tablet or whatever. They're going to get it and be like, oh my gosh, this is an iPad, So.
Well, and
nice.
And not only that, but the PlayStation Portal, like I would hope that it's a whole lot lighter than these other devices, so you can hold it at like you don't have to rest it on your lap in order to play it. Because when you were talking about sitting there and having it on your lap, all I could think of is you're looking down the whole time, and it's got to like strain your neck after a while. Am I wrong about that, Russ?
You're right, yeah. And so that's definitely like you could do it on the lap, but I would rather just do it on a table. If you're going to do it on a table, then might as well use the laptop. That's kind of like where I'm at with all that. So yeah.
That was one of the complaints for one of the early Steam Deck reviews. I think they called it Deck Neck, right? Like I think it was Engadget, where like it was just you're looking like this the whole time, and you get sore in the neck. And maybe for some people it was just harder to hold up here, or maybe they weren't used to it. But yeah, I can't imagine with something that size. So
yeah,
what's nice about okay, people screaming. Sorry about that. There's okay. That's one of the nice things about clamshell, because you can actually have the device be ergonomic to you. Right. Rather than you be ergonomic to the device. But
right. Who had that Carrie would have clamshell at 12 minutes 50 into the show? Who
what was the over under for that one?
Whoever had it, you win. I'm sorry, Carrie. I just had to jump in there. Go ahead.
No, that's it. That's all I wanted to say.
There was a recent Steam Deck clamshell render on Reddit, and it looked really nice. It did have sort of those like inset analog sticks that I don't really like, the really short ones. But other than that render was beautiful. I'll find it and I'll post it in the chat.
That's awesome. You could just share it on your screen. But we were talking about the clamshell design. And somebody had mentioned, I hate the clamshell design because of the sticks. I would love to have a clamshell where, I don't know if it's possible, but where you could just take off the stick caps and like have them like magnetically hook up to something somewhere so that when you can close it, it closes all the way, but you could still have real sticks. I think that would be awesome. Carrie, do you think that do you think that's a possibility ever, or is that something that because I don't know much about sticks. Do the posts that they go on have to be too tall for that to really be an option anyway?
Sorry, say that again. You're looking to have analog sticks that are like disconnectable so that you can store them somewhere to make the device thinner?
Yeah, like on the Xbox Elite controller, like how they can pop right off.
I mean, you could do that. I probably would be on the side that would not want that. The main problem with clamshell with analog sticks is that, as you've already highlighted, is that the height of the analog stick is going to rob you of space somewhere. So you're either going to have an alcove for the analog stick so that the screen can close properly, or you're going to have to do something like you're saying, where you can kind of take out these analog sticks and have like a caddy somewhere on the device itself, just to make a device thinner. The reality is that I don't think that it's super necessary. The GPD Win Max 2 and the GPD Win Mini show that you can have an alcove that supports that recess. And a side benefit of that is that it does make the device a certain thickness, which actually makes it more comfortable to use. Having a device be thinner, in my experience, is something that just becomes I get cramps in my hands if a device is too thin when I'm holding handheld. So like the 3DS and the PS Vita, often whenever I play that at length, I would get cramps. I never got it with the Switch though, but I never got it with any of GPD's devices that have a thicker device. So I've always been of a fan of just thicker devices in general. So it's a side benefit. It's a silver lining to it.
But I've never used one of those GPD devices. Do they have real sticks, or are they like more like the Switch sticks? Which, no offense to Nintendo Switch fans, but those are not real sticks if you ask me. They're too small.
Yeah, so they are small Switch-like in terms of their travel and all other types of characteristics. They're closer to like PS Vita than Switch sticks. So if you use the PS Vita's analog stick, you can get a kind of an idea of what that's like. They're have a bit more travel than those. So they're not full analog sticks in that regard, so you will be losing out. If you wanted to go that, then you're going to have like really thick devices. Yeah. So the problem then becomes, if you wanted to have something that you were looking for, you can have like this disconnectable analog cap. You also have to remember the skirt for the analog stick itself is also going to occupy space. So now you're talking about just a cap, and that is fairly large. You're almost like an inch and a half of space. So I don't even know if that would even be very portable by disconnecting it and like storing somewhere else.
So I've been messing around with a GPD Win Mini, and one of the many handhelds that I need to be reviewing, and that one has, like Fox is saying, like it has those smaller Switch style ones. And I personally, I keep wishing that they were bigger, like, because the thing is with that size in particular, when you push on, like say you're going up on an analog stick, it just kind of tilts. You know what I mean? It just kind of stays where it is and then tilts over. If you're using something like a bigger, like Steam Deck one or whatever, the whole thing kind of pivots. It kind of moves, right? With it, it has a more circular feel to it. And that's what I would rather have. And unfortunately, the GPD Win Mini ones are just too small. And it sucks because the GPD Win 4, which has pretty small analog sticks too, does that kind of pivot. And so that would be ideal for me, is at least having that size. But I completely understand why it's not possible with, a clamshell design. But that's one of those things, I always do like my Destiny 2 test, like how's a good FPS going to be on it? And for me, the GPD Win Mini doesn't really pass that test. Like I don't look forward to playing it on that device, which kind of sucks because it's like the perfect form factor. Just grab it, you got like a 3DS you can play Destiny 2 on, but unfortunately it just doesn't pan out, at least for me in my control like preference.
Russ, I'm trying to remember the Ioneo Qun. Does it have the right stick up high, or is it down low?
It is low. But it's in a V shape. They did a really good job doing the V shape with that one in particular, and so it is very comfortable. There we go. So yeah,
I didn't know you had one, Fox.
Yeah, you got the silver one. That looks nice. And so the trackpads are way too low, as you can see. Like you cannot play a first-person shooter with that game using trackpads like you can on the Steam Deck. So it's mostly for like Windows management. But yeah, that's the placement of everything on the Qun is really good. Like they just looked at the Steam Deck and said, all right, what can we do without getting sued? So that's basically like the buttons, everything is very similar. Yeah. And so that's a good thing. It's just, it's, $1,700, but
yeah, it's definitely like min-maxing the Steam Deck as it is. Like even the back buttons that they have mimic it, the Steam Deck's back buttons. So it's pretty funny in that regard. Yeah.
So are you like you for those of you that either couldn't see it because of the way that this is going to be edited, Kerry just held up his Ioneo Qun or Qun. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce it.
Yep.
I think it's Qun, which is like Chinese, right? For big fish. Isn't that what it's supposed to be?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's what somebody had told me. But Kerry's holding it up now. What are your thoughts on it, Kerry?
So very quickly, it's there's a lot of things that they're doing on it, and they're min-maxing in a lot of different ways. And there isn't a big benefit to trying to do it because it's like one device that they claim it does. So it took about like 4 days just to collect all the data. So I did about a 12-hour test at 54 watt on this, and I'm charting that out. And then I did every watt from 5 watt to 54 watt against 2 benches, which took like 5 hours each
Jeez.
run. So I had to collect all that data and put all that in. So it's just days of testing. Overall, it's fine, right? Like if you use an IE 2 device, you basically have a super IE 2. Does that really do anything for performance? Not really. Does it do anything for having a bigger screen? Yeah. But the trackpads, people are going to be left wanting a lot because they don't compare to the Steam Deck at all.
Yeah.
The left trackpad is you can change this in the IS space, but the left circle pad is basically cursor keys, and then the right trackpad is effectively just a laptop touchpad. So the bottom left quadrant is left click, and the bottom right quadrant is right click, and it's not great.
Yeah. So here's my question. The first thing that popped in my head when I saw the Qun was the idea that if it's just a mouse, does Steam Input recognize it and work with the cool stuff that Steam Input can do?
No. As far as Steam is concerned, it's a mouse.
Oh, that's so disappointing. So you can't do the cool the pop-up menus and stuff with that.
I mean, I could. No, you like the radial menu and stuff. You could potentially make that happen. I mean, you could probably finagle it somewhere in Steam Input to have that happen. I would have to double check, but
it's so the INEO devices prior all have a similar problem with gyro, right? Steam Input doesn't recognize the gyro on the device, and so you can't really use it in Steam Input. And then so the INEO software has software to configure the gyro, but it's extremely limited compared to Steam Input. So like what it basically does is you hold down a button and that'll map it to analog stick movement. And what that means for me personally is that I can't use flick stick, because flick stick, I want the analog to be distinct from the trackpad. And so it doesn't work out for me. Or from
Rich,
the gyro,
can you just remind anybody who's watching this right now what flick stick is? Because I think there's a lot of people who would be like, what are they talking about?
So flick stick is an aiming method specifically for like first-person shooters, but you can use it in other genres as well, where you're moving the analog stick. You can sweep it kind of in the full 360 degrees, and the direction in which you sweep it is, flicking to the left will make you turn to the left. Flicking to the right will make you turn to the right. Same thing for sweeping. And so what that means, though, is that you don't have any access to vertical movement with the analog stick. So you need gyro to be able to move the cursor vertically.
Yeah. Anybody in here use flick stick? I try it, and I keep trying it, and I never get good at it. Russ is shaking his head. No, you don't like it?
No, like I have issues because I play inverted. And so like gyro just breaks my mind, like, because it's like I cannot like get it to work in the way that my brain needs it. And so I've never been able to really use gyro in any way because of that, especially with first person shooters. Yeah.
Speaking of first person shooters and gyro, I was playing Counter-Strike 2 this morning, trying it out. And I tried using my Alpaca controller, and I couldn't figure out how to buy guns, because I don't think that there's a B button on that controller. So I was like, okay, well, that's less than optimal. So then I went and I grabbed my Steam controller, because I'm not a mouse and keyboard guy. I hooked it up, or I plugged in my Steam controller. And I was like, I'm going to use the default whatever. Like, this is the Steam controller made by Valve, playing Counter-Strike 2, made by Valve. They had gyro turned off by default. I was like, what in the heck are you guys doing? So I turned it on and it was fine, but that was really weird. And then I came over and tried mouse and keyboard, and I just died.
The thing is about like this whole trackpad thing and whatnot. I worry, like the Qun is a great example in that, like, this thing is so much more expensive than the Steam Deck. And if you finagle it just right, you can kind of get it to work almost as good as the Steam Deck. And it's like, what are you paying all this money for? If you're going to pay a ton of money for a device, then it should improve your gameplay experience. It should remove barriers as opposed to adding them. And so it's one of those where it's a very contradictory handheld. I can see why people will be very happy with it if they get it, but I don't know if there's a lot of people who want to go over that threshold of paying that amount of money when they can just get a Steam Deck and do all the other tinkering they'd like.
Yeah, it's 1,700, right?
That the high spec one is like the one they sent me is the $1,700 model with like 4 terabytes of storage. I'm like, why? Like, send me the cheapest one every time, please, because I cannot make an argument why this thing's worth $1,700.
What were you going to say, Carrie?
So a little inside baseball type of stuff. When the Kun was first coming out or being talked about with the trackpads, I actually talked with Valve for a brief moment about that, and there was some talk. I was talking with Arthur over on INEO and Valve, and I was like, hey, would you want to like work with Valve on this and get the trackpads working like Steam Deck trackpads? And there was like a brief time with that where Valve was interested, but they had a caveat that they didn't think that they would even want to entertain it because effectively this would be Valve's implementation. So all of the bad stuff that comes with that on the Windows side. So it'd be Lizard mode without Steam running and all the other stuff. And so there was a brief moment where there was talks, but then nothing really happened. And now we have what we have.
It just makes me think that Valve need to ship SteamOS 3 to everybody who wants to use it, and then fix that. Like, they ship the Steam Deck and they keep updating it to make it better and better and better. They could do the same thing with SteamOS. Like, why do they have to wait until it's, pristine? So I don't know. Go ahead, Rich.
This came up during TGS, where Pierre Lou was interviewed by CNBC. I have some notes here. So he said, obviously, it's something we'd like to work with hardware manufacturers so that they can adopt SteamOS in the future. And this was, not but 1 week ago. But the thing is, they've said this before, right? Like, and I don't mean that these are empty promises from Valve. It just feels like when Bethesda announced Elder Scrolls 6 in 2018, right? Like, maybe you should have waited to talk about this, because it'll happen, but we have no idea when it'll happen, and it feels like progress has been incredibly slow. So I'm personally getting a little impatient, but also I know they just dropped Counter-Strike 2. You mentioned that. They just dropped Steam VR 2. They just dropped SteamOS 3.5. So clearly they've got a lot on their hands. It's just my own personal opinion, my own personal feelings about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, Half-Life 3 is right around the corner, Russ. Too.
Yeah, right.
Oh, come on. Why you gotta? Oh, that hurt. That hurt bad, Russ.
Yeah.
Did anybody else get a chance to try out Counter-Strike 2? No.
No.
That Counter-Strike has always been a thing that I still have the same anxieties that I have from even playing like Quake 1 back in like 90s on M-Player. There was always this anxiety that I had that I was just going to get housed. And there was a minimum skill level that I needed to like even show up at the door. And for me, that's like the main reason why I never go into those games, just because they're not just for like, oh, let me just have some fun here and there and see what's up. It's like there's an investment that I need to do before I can even consider it. So that's why I should really play it, but I don't.
Yeah, it's kind of like I'm going to spend the time installing this game so that I can be fodder for everybody else. Like, I'm literally just willingly becoming a victim, And so I've always felt that way about Counter-Strike too. It's just so rough. Yeah, I always play with bots in my testing just so I at least have a chance.
Do you guys play fighters or any other Carrie, you definitely play online multiplayer, right? Like Halo, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, any game that I have I've invested some time in and I start learning, I get very, very competitive. So I want to be competitive, and there's a part of me. Yeah. So Tekken 3 for PlayStation 1, I actually entered in local tournaments for that.
Nice.
Came in 4th and 5th. Got housed by someone just using Brian, which I was like, you picked Brian, and it's so like paper rock scissors type of
for sure
fighting style for Brian that it just threw me for a loop. He would just do these ones where I'm blocking, and then he would just like chip at my leg, and it was just chipping away at me that I wasn't really ready for. And anytime I was ready to reverse, he was ready to reverse my reverse, and I was like, damn, that was something. But yeah, I got really good in Tekken 3, like I can do King's Rolling Death Cradle
Nice.
on PS1 controller. Like I could do that. So going to arcade stick was a different for me. But yeah, I'm super big on competitiveness, but there's like, okay, I'm going to spend this month getting good.
Right.
And then I'm going to go online and I'm going to, I'm going to bring it.
See, I'm the opposite. I don't like any online competitive game because I'm not very competitive in gaming in particular. It's like I celebrate when the other guy wins. I'm like, hey man, good job. You know, like you got a really good headshot. You know, like and so I'm just not good at getting good. Right. And so even like Destiny 2, I don't play any of the competitive stuff. It's just full on, NPC, like fighting on PvE or whatever they call it. So
dude, like there's some things that I like. I mean, I'm with you, Russ. Like whenever I get like housed like specifically well, I'm like, damn, that was amazing. Like Quake, like I remember Quake in my mind because like there's a dude that I was playing against and it was like free for all, but he was killing everyone. And I remember I was running to something and he was running the map in such a way that he was just literally firing. He saw me run this way and he would fire a rocket down the hallway. And as I'm about to get to like the whatever power up it was, it nails me. And I'm like, dude, the timing of all that, knowing how I'm moving and all the like the chess that he's playing in his head, I was like, that's amazing. I was just like in awe. And that's what was like Quake. Whenever I play on M Player, I just like start like just bead sweats coming down on me. Like, oh man, it's gonna be for real now. Yeah.
See, I'm sometimes I play like that guy that you're talking about, but I have no consistency. So like I will have a match where I'm just like, I am God on the field, killing everybody all the time. And then I will have a match where I am like what Kerry was saying a few minutes ago, where he's like, I am just here so you guys can up your K to D ratio or whatever.
Yep.
That's why I'm here. And I can never get any kind of consistency. But I'm also a lot like Russ. Like I remember we were at a softball game and it was kids softball game and like somebody on the other team hit the ball and it went sailing and my wife and I were like, yeah, good job, kid. And like this parent turned around and looked at us and they were like, that's not on your team. I was like, I don't care. I was like, the kid did good. What's your problem?
It's kids playing sports. We're cheering for everybody. Yeah.
And honestly, I couldn't tell you the score. If you paid me $1,000, I couldn't have told you the score that day because it doesn't matter to me. But I'm always happy when somebody does something great. So even when somebody gets a snipes me with a headshot, I'm like, good for you. But I will say that the kill time, I don't know what the people call that, where the time to kill in Counter-Strike 2, boy, it's a lot faster than I remember the old Counter-Strike games, and just I'm dying instantaneously. But maybe it's just because I'm really old. Who knows? Let's move on and talk. Something else that Rich brought up was Steam VR 2. That just got announced alongside MetaQuest 3, which is $500, and it's coming out like in a couple of weeks, which is kind of fast. I didn't realize it was going to be so quick. Anybody here pre-ordering that? Because I'm thinking about it. Carrie, you're shaking your head yes?
Yeah, so my son plays with his Quest 2 quite frequently, so I'm going to be getting the Quest 3 for him for Christmas. So that's like a single Christmas gift that we're going to get him, like just have a nice big Christmas gift. So we're going to get him that, and then I'll probably take the Quest 2 and then give it to my daughter, because every now and again she just wants to play when he's playing or whenever she has friends over, so there's like things like that. But the Roblox client is now being ported over to the to Quest. So my son has been playing it through Oculus Air Link, with a wireless way to stream from PC to headset. So he's been playing a lot of Roblox VR and other VR games. So he's in it, and we made his room to have like a VR space. So that's the reason why I'm getting it, but I'm very curious how the optics are and the resolution. So I'm very curious about it, especially with all the other stuff that they have. They don't have eye tracking like the Quest Pro has. So I'm wondering how that's going to work, especially with the MR stuff, if you're going to be doing like virtual conferences and stuff. It's all very, very interesting. But yeah, it's kind of weird to see the Quest 3 coming out But also from our point of view, seemingly like Valve has been gunning it to make something like have news somewhere for this because they need to compete in some way. So it's odd that we haven't heard anything from Valve. But yeah, the problem I think for me is that I think a lot of people are looking at the Quest 3, especially with Oculus Air Link, which is amazing. Not using playing PC VR via wireless is so good that I don't want to ever have a cable ever again because I play on the Quest 2 and it's so freeing and nice. I have the Valve headset right over here.
Index.
Yeah, the Index. I have that over there. That I have space that I've created in my studio to do it, but it's always getting cluttered with other stuff, so it's always something that's happening. But having inside-out tracking, wireless, all those types of things are like make playing VR so much easier to just jump into. So for me, I think that there's also a lot of people that are just I'm just saying this from my spell, like all the people that are like us, right? Like that are in the scene and knowing what's going on. I think that a lot of people have been waiting on Deckard, or Deckard-like, something that Valve is going to be doing as an update to the Index with something else, just something better. And the Quest 3 might be a purchase that they make because they're just tired of waiting and they want something to fill that gap that is a good price with good features, and that's it. So it's like Quest 3 looks really compelling.
And it's compatible with Steam VR. Go ahead, Rich.
I was this close to that exact scenario, right? Because I was buying into the hype with people thinking that Valve would announce something during the MetaConnect because that's what they did back when, I forget which device was announced, the Rift S. So basically Valve did the same thing where they announced something at the same time that something else was being announced, and people bought into the, myself included, bought into the hype that they would do that again. Now with the Deckard and with Steam VR 2 beta launching. And so I was hyped enough for a Deckard that at the end of the Meta Connect, or at the end of their presentation for the Quest 3, I was like, I think I'll just buy this. I took a minute and I didn't end up buying it, but I was really close to pulling the trigger. Part of the reason I didn't buy it is because I knew I would have to get the Legion Go. So I'm like, I'm not going to spend $1,200 in 2 weeks. That's just insane.
And you, Russ, did you pick it up, or are you picking it up or thinking of it?
No, I'm still in that wait and see kind of phase. You know, I'm interested in VR and whatnot, but it's just, I want to wait until everything's like good. Like, I don't want to be the guy who's like testing things as they're rolling out. I want to wait till that moment where like, okay, now VR is great. This is the one you got to get because this one's the clear winner. Like, I'm going to wait for that moment still. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about it. Like, I have the PSVR 2. I like it a lot, but the whole thing about it having a cord and being hooked up to my PS5 is an issue, especially because this room is very small, and this, like, the desk that I'm sitting at is huge, and like when we built this room, like none of the VR stuff was on my mind. So like the thing about the Quest 3 is that it's a standalone system, and if I wanted to, I could just take it down to, like, we have a home gym, you know, with like a big open space and a treadmill and the weights and stuff, and I could just move the bench out of the way and wave my hands around like a moron in there and have an absolute blast. I can't do that with my PSVR 2, but I could do that with the MetaQuest 3. But the thing that holds me back on the MetaQuest 3 is, yeah, it's more powerful and it's great, and it's got these nice pancake lenses that are nice and smooth and don't have the little ridges on them, and all that stuff is great, but my PC is old. And so if I want to get the most out of it, I'd have to upgrade I'd have to replace the graphics card and maybe the CPU in my computer, and I'm just not ready to do that at this point. So I have not ordered that, and, you know, secondly, because I bought the Legion Go for, you know, for the channel, I think that if I made a video about MetaQuest, it probably wouldn't perform as well, and so I gotta decide where am I going to be spending my money. I gotta spend my money on something that's going to help. So I ended up going with the Legion Go instead. But I am interested in the MetaQuest 3, and I'm interested in what Steam VR is, because, like, it's this other interface that you can basically do with, what would you call it, Carrie, where you do it wirelessly?
The one it's Oculus Air Link.
And so does that use Steam VR when you do the Oculus Air Link and it just connects to Steam and lets you ignore
Yeah.
Facebook's nonsense?
Yes, exactly right. So you basically need to have Oculus software up and running first. So you're in Oculus's thing, but then when you launch Steam VR, it supersedes, and then you jump into Steam VR wirelessly, which is how we've been doing it. And that's how my son actually has to play Roblox. He actually has to initiate Steam VR first, and then we play Roblox. So there, Steam VR has a bunch of features where it's easier to kind of track what the it sees the headset, it sees the controller, so you have a better interface of what's available to the machine insofar as what the link is showing and suggesting is initiated and active. So Steam VR even prior to 2.0 was always been fantastic with Oculus Air Link. So as far as I'm concerned, it is a PC headset that also can function by itself. For me, I think one of that Roblox functionality is killer. Because there's going to be a lot of kids, even for Quest 2, that are going to want to play. Like, it's a bunch of... So there's a thing on Roblox called VR Hands, and it's the coolest thing. So there are kids that play VR Hands in Roblox. If they don't have a VR headset, they're basically like little people that are like running around trying to escape the people with VR hands that are giants that can like pick them up and like yeet them off of like the level and stuff. And they're just... That's all it is. Like it's just a big sandbox of like giants that are the VR people versus the people that are on this stuff or whatever, just trying to escape. It's a lot of, like, I see my kid playing and I enjoy just watching him play. So I think that's a bit of a hidden killer app for Quest once that actually happens. So we'll see what happens, I suppose.
One of the things. Go ahead, Russ. I'm sorry.
I was just going to mention, with Steam VR 2, again, I'm an outside looking in kind of guy, but I looked at all their like promo materials, and I mentioned this in our chat. They show like the Steam VR 2 interface and how wonderful and up to date and all these things it is, but they only show 2 games on the main screen, like as their like promo, like look at how advanced and we are and all that stuff. And it was Half-Life Alyx and Beat Saber, and I was just like, come on, like that says so much about the VR industry right now, is that like you still have to show older titles and just with a fancier packaging, and like let's get to the point where there is some sort of like, I mean, I really do want to play Alyx, but all the same, like that's the only killer game I want to play right now. I need to get to that point where it's enough to get me to buy a console, and it's just not there yet.
I saw a lot of similar criticism. I'm not familiar with like all the different, other than what you just said, right? I'm not familiar with all the different killer apps or whatever for VR, but I saw a lot of the same criticism for MetaConnect, where people were just saying they're just showing off the same game. So there's not much reason to pick up a Quest 3 if you already have a Quest 2. And, we've said it before, but there was a tweet, I think, from a VR content creator, but they were like how that person, they knew they had 15 friends, and of those 15 friends, seven of them have a Quest 2, but basically no one still uses it for the same reasons. Just a lot of friction to have to put it on, and to have to it's a lot to get to the point where you're actually playing the game.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with the PlayStation VR. Like, I that Horizon game looks great, but I still got to play through Forbidden West. Like, I got time, and so there's just nothing that's compelling me to invest in any of those hardware right now. So,
well, this last thing about the MetaQuest 3 that I thought was really weird is that it's going to have Xbox Cloud gaming built in, not built in. Like, you'll be able to play that. I can't imagine, okay, I have the PSVR 2, and I've tried some of the, as VR people usually say, flat games on that. So basically it makes like a big screen in front of you. And I did not feel like that was a compelling experience in the least. Would any of, if you had one, would you bother using Xbox Cloud gaming? You would, Carrie. Talk about why. Convince me.
Oh, so I've reviewed some XR glasses, and I've used Xbox xCloud on that or other stuff on there, and there is something to be said for a private home theater that you're putting on your face. You're not bothering anyone else near you or around you. There's no sound pollution going to them. You have your own occupied space. If the kids are using the family TV, this is why people play on handhelds, because it's another device. When you think about laying down and you don't want to bother your spouse with whatever, there are reasons why you would want to entertain using these types of things. So having xCloud support built into it by itself and easy to get into, I think is something that's worthwhile. And the only reason that I think it exists at all is just because Facebook and Microsoft have a long history together, where they just had a mutual respect for each other. So that's more than likely the reason why it exists at all. But yeah, for me, I think I've been a big fan of xCloud only because Microsoft has done all the work to seamlessly share saves. If I was playing on xCloud and I could not play on PC and Xbox, xCloud would be useless. Like, not being able to have my save instantly transfer back and forth means that I wouldn't use it at all, because I don't consider cloud gaming to be anything other than supplementary and something that is rapid, right? So I like xCloud for just that reason. And having it be on the Oculus Quest 3, I find it to be the same thing as all those XR glasses like Nreal or why is the other name escaping me right now?
Vitcher.
Yeah, Vitcher. The Vitcher ones. They have the headband. They have a neckband that attaches to it, which is the whole MR experience that you're supposed to wear. So these glasses you can see through, and then you could also, not that I think that's possible right now, because no one should be doing that, but it's the same type of thing. The headset has everything built into it. You're running solo, so the device is running by itself. I think it's worthwhile.
Yeah, so for me, like I've got the Nreal glasses or X-Real glasses here. This is a lot different than putting on a VR headset to me. Like, this is very unintrusive. Whereas with a VR headset, I got like a thing that's all the way around my head, and I, clamp down the thing on the back, and then I put on I don't necessarily have to put the headphones on, because I think the Quest 3 has built-in like speakers.
They fire into your.
Like, this is a very different ask than putting on a whole thing. But if it works for you, or if it works for anybody else out there, that's an awesome win for you. These, I think, are cool because they're so lightweight. And they're going to keep getting lighter. But
Should
for a
we all
VR
put on-
headset to do...
I hope all of us put on.
Yeah, should we all put on our XR glasses for the thumbnail?
Mine are in the other room.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. It's fine. Mine's over there somewhere. It's just
That's too funny.
future's so bright.
Yeah, the
But
way I
then
see
shades.
the way I see it with the VR stuff is like, if it's just a feature in something you've already bought for other reasons, then it makes sense.
Yep.
But like, I'm with you, Bill. Like, I would get an immediate headache if I tried to watch a movie or do whatever with a full VR headset on. It's just I don't know. I got a little baby neck or something. I can't hold up that weight for long, But the X-Real glasses, I use them all the time, and so. It's one of those where, I don't buy the Quest 3 for that feature, but if you already have the Quest 3, then it might be something you could incorporate.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Look at the price of the X-Reals versus the price of the Quest 3, right? Like, it's how big of a difference are we talking about? Like $100?
I don't remember. How much is the X-Reals?
They're like $400 retail.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a really good point then, Carrie.
Yeah, so like you're spending $100 extra, and the Quest 3 has a very good Snapdragon chipset in it that has its own operating system that runs. You don't have to attach it to something else. You just put it on your head and you start going, and there's nothing else to attach. So I agree with you guys. I'm not saying that either one is better. I think they both have their different use cases, and it's great that everyone has a choice. So for me, I would consider it, but I'm buying it for my son, so I'm really just going to be like looking at it and saying, oh, this is pretty cool, and then just giving it to my son and probably never using mostly because I'm like with you guys, right? Like, it says a lot, like Russ says, that if your best VR stuff is stuff that's already been out forever, like, you got to stop showing Beat Saber, guys. Like, stop showing it, because if that's the only thing you got, which is very entertaining, however, it shows a problem that the VR landscape has for themselves.
It's like,
Yeah,
hey,
I
buy
would
the
agree
newest
with that.
Xbox. They can play Rock Band. Come on.
Yeah.
Oh, man. All right. Well, you brought up consoles, so we might as well talk a little bit about Sony. Sony apparently got hacked, and they finally have responded to this. I'm going to try and put this on the screen, but while I'm trying to put it on the screen, Rich, can you talk about it real quick?
I probably can't. So
I'm
that's
sorry.
That's
I
all
thought
I
we
know
had
is
talked
they got
about it.
hacked, and by a ransomware group, right? So I do have like questions as to like in terms of whether or not leaks come as a result of this, whether or not it's like ethically questionable for like journalists to report on those leaks because they're ransomware as opposed to something that comes out of a court document, even if it's accidentally uploaded or something like that. So I'm going to be interested to see how that goes. But yeah, I don't know the details about what actually happened.
Well, so it says here over at Push Square that a ransomware group claims to have compromised all Sony systems. And basically they're saying, we're going to hold your data hostage. So first off, if you use Sony stuff, probably want to change your passwords and stuff like that to make sure that nobody can make purchases and things like that. And Sony has basically said, we're currently investigating the situation. We have no further comment at this time. The last time that this happened, if I remember right, it was like around Christmas time, and it was close to the launch of the PS4, if I'm remembering that correctly. And basically, you couldn't use Sony stuff for days. Am I remembering that wrong? Does anybody know?
They've been hacked multiple times in the past, pretty massively. There was like 2010 and then 2013, but I was never a big PlayStation user, so I don't remember how how impacting that was because I wasn't actively playing any PlayStation games, so I don't recall that. But I do recall how many. I distinctly remember. I think it was 2010 because I was like, everyone wants Sony to die, even Mother Nature, because it was like Sony got hacked, and then they got that gigantic earthquake that happened, that the Fukushima nuclear power plant, and like just everything that was going bad, like it would just seem like everything was against Sony at that time. I think their stock price was down to like $10, and I was like, man, they can't catch a break for anything. That was a pretty desperate time for them.
Yeah, and Kerry says he wasn't really affected by that because he's not really a Sony guy. But one thing that Sony that did affect Kerry was this idea that we've got all these PC ports that have been coming to from PlayStation, and like we kind of joked about this in our little Discord where we were like, well, are we going to keep seeing those ports? Is that relationship going to change? Kerry, you had just said really nice things about Jim Ryan, and he was waiting
the entire thing. Yeah, he's like, someone said something nice about it. Time to detach. Like, go off on a high note. I mean, I say that a bit tongue in cheek, just because I know deep down that there's a lot of PlayStation faithful that disagree with a lot of the things that Jim Ryan has been doing. And I think that if you look at PlayStation's playbook as of the recent years, even with the PlayStation 4, they are following the Xbox 360's playbook. They have been going away from their Eastern roots and becoming more of a Western company. All of the big games that were big on Xbox 360 are now big on PlayStation, so Call of Duty and all the other stuff. So they've been kind of going that way that has been counter to what a lot of, I would say, the hardcore PlayStation people actually liked. And everything that they've been doing has been going further and further into generalized ways that the gaming industry has been going into, like games as a service, which are every hardcore PlayStation person is just like that. I know they're hardcore against these types of games, and they just want those gigantic cinematic single player games that PlayStation is known for. So that's a long thing that I digress to say, but I love that Sony has been embracing bringing games to PC. I am totally okay with them like letting PlayStation have first dibs, having it for a year, for whatever length of time before they actually bring it out. I know that there's been like some initiative that they want to kind of have like the sequel coming out before the first version comes out for PC, which is likely to happen for like Ghost of Tsushima. So that type of stuff. I'm fine with it. I've been a big fan of it. I think Jim Ryan has been influencing that direction. So yeah, if there is a backpedaling on this, that would be not the best case scenario for me.
Some people also seem to think that it could go the other way, right? That like Herman Holst gets even more. Like some people thought that he may step in when it was only announced that Jim Ryan was stepping down. Some people thought that Herman Holst may step in, but either way, some other people may feel like he's going to have a little bit more power, and it seems like he is one of the bigger voices behind these ports to PC. So, is there any world where that gap closes a little bit more, and we get ports even sooner?
I was always under the belief that was going to be happening regardless of anything. There was always this, they had to release it in phases so that the PlayStation faithful could take this, take that medicine a little bit, have that go down a little bit smoother. Right. And there's always been like, it's never going to be day one. You're never going to get day one. Day one will always be PS5. And Helldivers 2 is already day one for PC, and then they're like, whoa, that's gas. That's
Helldivers.
That's games as a service. That doesn't count. So there are all of these things where you see that there is slowly but surely the goalposts are moving from where things are. Yeah. I've always been of the mindset that it's getting closer and closer to day one, just because for them it's more money that they're leaving on the table, and they are a business first, and they, as much as they need to, capitulate to their fans, the bottom line is that a lot of them are buying Call of Duty and FIFA, and they're not the hardcore that are most vocal.
Mm-hmm. I also don't know how much the fans actually care, right? Like, would it actually result in people buying fewer PlayStations, for example?
No.
It seems like
you're just going to see dude, like on Resetera, once Jim Ryan left, there's a bunch of PlayStation people that are like, good riddance. He's been making every wrong choice. I'm glad that he's gone. There's people that are celebrating, that are PlayStation faithful. They're celebrating that he has left. Yeah.
I don't have a horse in any of these races. My my report card that I gave for Jim Ryan was basically, I feel like he's done a good job on the software side, and things on the hardware side have been, let's say, questionable, right? So just on the software side, if we're just talking about nice, good job. Pulled it up quickly. Just the acquisitions, if nothing else, those acquisitions, I don't agree that Bungie does more for Sony than Activision does for Microsoft, but I think the pound for pound, that Bungie acquisition is tremendous. I think pound for pound, the Insomniac acquisition is tremendous, and same with Nix's, right?
Dude, yeah, Insomniac is carrying PlayStation.
Right?
They are carrying those guys. So I just got a notification that my Spider-Man PlayStation 5 just got canceled, which I'm pretty bummed about right now. So I have to find out where that is. I've been waiting for a limited edition PS5 before I bought a PS5, and I knew it was going to happen. I still have my Spider-Man PS4 Pro, which I love. So once I saw that, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm definitely
get that one.
So I got it, but then it was Italy, and I was like, oh, okay. And then I'm looking through, and it got canceled, so now I'm trying to scramble to find one. It's not a great time for me right now, so I'm trying to secure that.
Yep.
I'm a simple guy when it comes to Sony. I just want those tentpole first, like the single player games. That's always what I've enjoyed about PlayStation properties, all the way back from PS3 and beyond. And then I love the PC ports. But the thing that worries me is that I think that they provide a lot of goodwill to PC gamers, in the sense that it makes people feel good about the fact that they're not locked behind the PS4 or PS5. But I would love to see those sales numbers. Are they selling a ton as well, to the point where it's also making it worth it for Sony? And so that's what I'm worried about, is that it looks like a beautiful, wonderful gesture to PC gamers, but are they following through by buying enough to justify having more ports in the future? And that's what, as a business, that's probably what they're thinking about.
Good.
I'll say, from what I've seen, right, just the concurrent players, the really big games made a big splash. The Spider-Man, God of War, those two made a big splash. If you look at Sackboy, you look at what was the other one recently?
Ratchet and Clank.
Ratchet and Clank. That is another one. That was disappointing to me, because
it was. Ratchet and Clank was amazing
as well.
Ratchet and Clank is fantastic on PC. It is amazing. I've been enjoying it. I actually want to finish it up. I just heard the game isn't that long, so I'm even more for it. I'm sick. I have to finish this. Yeah. I enjoyed Ratchet and Clank a bunch, and I've never been a big Ratchet and Clank fan to begin with. I love everything that they're doing, but along those same lines, I think that, there's not a lot of marketing that goes onto it. Their state of plays, they ignore talking about PC stuff. They always have it as like an also ran. So like when the state of play happened, I was like, okay, so we'll probably get in 24 hours a blog post about whatever game's coming out later. Turned out to be like a week or so that we found out that the Horizon,
That's true.
Horizon Forbidden West was coming, and Nixus is port. Like all they have to say, like, dude, just go on state of play, just be like, Nixus is porting this, and everyone's like, whoa, yeah. Like, I mean, they're just an amazing porting studio, and that was a fantastic acquisition. But yeah, you look at their numbers aren't super fantastic, but then you look at how long they were out, and also if you take a look at Horizon Zero Dawn, right? Uncharted 4. When you think about the PS4 generation as it was, a lot of those games during that time, you could literally just wait 1 year and then get the game for almost $10.
Right.
So that's what I was always doing. I was like, I'll just wait a year. I mean, I have a bunch of PS4 games that I paid $10 for. I bought Uncharted 4 for $8. So I just waited. I had a PS4 Pro, and I was like, I'll wait a year. I have a ton of games, and no rush for me. So I have a PS4 exclusive physical library over there that I bought. And then when the PS5 came out, and then they up the pricing went to $70, the discounts slowed down like crazy. So now the only thing, a year later, I'm seeing it like go for $50, and I'm like, that just feels like regular price. That feels like a 1 week discount, not a 1 year discount. So I think going along this talk, right, is that the discounts have been lessened with PS5 generation. So I think as we start seeing, Ratchet & Clank is going against this thesis that I have, this theory that I have, obviously. But as we start looking at newer games that are going to be coming to PC, the lessened discount amount will mean that the paying $70 for God of War Ragnarok on PC is going to be okay. Because, like, well, it's $50 on PS5 and it's $70 here. All right, no problem. I'll pick that up. But if you're looking at PS4 and it's like it's $10 in PS4 and you're want $50 on PC, that's... Come on, what are you doing? Like, it feels almost insulting to people. So there is that large price gap where it almost feels like they're just, they're double dipping in such a manner that may not be very appealing.
Yeah. So I worry about people like you, though, Fox, because, okay, so say you have a PS5 and you're like, you know what? This is going to be coming to PC, so I'm not going to buy it for the PlayStation because I'm going to wait because they don't have cross saves and all that other stuff, right? But then Sony's going to see that and be like, oh, well, this game's not very popular. No one's buying it, so we don't need to make a PC port. And then they don't. You know what I mean? So we're like shooting ourselves in the foot by waiting for that eventual PC port. And so... yeah, I feel that. Like, I 100%, like, for Forbidden West is one of those where it's like, I'm 30% into that game, and now I'm like, I'm not playing it again because I'm going to play it on the PC where I have, like, cloud saves and stuff. And so, if I hadn't have bought it already, then I probably wouldn't buy it now at all, And so it's one of those, it's rough. It's a chicken and egg kind of thing almost.
Yeah.
I think that we're a different group of people.
We are.
Who, like, there's 40 million PS5s out there. Those people, I would say 95% of those people are just playing on PS5. Like, they're not also playing on PC. And so those people don't really care if it comes to PC, unlike us. Like, we're like, oh, I want to be able to play it on PC. And they're just buying the games that they like. And then, so I don't know if I agree with that, Russ. I think that I don't think that, like, this group that watches this show, or like in this weird bubble that we're in, I don't think we move the needle enough to push Sony one way or the other on whether or not they're going to port a game over. But that's a good point. I hope I'm right.
Right. Yeah, you're right. No, it's a good point. I think that, like Ragnarok or something like that, people were so excited about that story. I mean, I pre-bought it and, like, pre-installed it. That's how much I was excited about it. I took 3 days off from the channel to play through it. And so, yeah, there's more people, I think, on that end than the kind of scenario that I just brought up, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'm hopeful that they continue on along the same path. You took a look at Naughty Dog, also like what Insomniac's doing. All these guys are really pushing it pretty hard. Look at Ratchet & Clank. That game is beautiful to look at. And the Sony Studios, I could have my feelings whatever they are, but they do produce really amazing games that I enjoy playing, and I can wait to play them. I have a bunch to play, but I would be upset myself if sales data was indicating and that they had to make a bigger push into games as a service as a result, and we're getting stuff that is not along the stuff that we all care to play, even though we may be in the minority. So yeah, I feel that I agree with both of you guys. I don't know how it's going to happen. I think that ultimately it's a business, and they're going to try to make as much profit as possible, and how that's going to muddy the waters is going to be regardless of how any of the hardcore dictate it should go, or how loud the hardcore are loud about it on forums and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see, especially with this new CEO or whoever's going to be taking over PlayStation and the direction that they take.
I think an interesting conversation that we could have maybe in a future episode is about how do you decide which platform you're going to play your games on? So for instance, Cyberpunk 2077 just got its DLC, and pretty much everybody is universally saying they fixed it. They made this is the game that they should have been. It launched right around the same time as Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3 was labeled as early. I heard this on a podcast. It was labeled as early access. Cyberpunk 2077 should have been labeled as early access. But it's out now, and that plus Phantom Liberty is really, really good. I have it on PC. I don't have Phantom Liberty because I haven't decided where I want to play it yet, because my PC is getting older, and when I got that game, I didn't have an Xbox Series X, I didn't have a PS5, and now I have those systems, and the game would play better on those systems, but I also already own it. And playing it on a 26, like, I'm trying to make a decision, where do I buy this game that's available everywhere? And if people who are watching this have like an idea for like how they make that decision, let us know in the comments down below. But I feel like I'm gonna guess that Carrie, always PC. If it's available PC, always PC. Am I correct on that?
Always PC. Always
okay.
PC.
What about you, Russ?
So if it's I'm leaning now more towards PC. It's a very new kind of approach for me. Before that, I preferred the console experience because all the updates and all the graphics tweaks and stuff. I don't want to do without stuff. I just want to play the game, especially if it's like a single person game. So the Sony games and whatnot, I always would just buy them directly on the console. Even if even in the early days of me like kind of getting spun up on PC stuff, even if there was a PC port, I still would prefer to play it on console. Now I'm torn, and yeah, for Cyberpunk, for example, I own it on GOG, and then that was such a pain in the butt to kind of have cross compatibility with. I bought it again on Steam, and so now I will probably buy it for that $30 for the expansion on that one, Steam as well.
And I'm considering buying it on my PlayStation because I've got the PlayStation Portal coming, and that's going to give me the ability to play it on that nice, like the screen is bigger than my Steam Deck screen, so I feel like that might be the right thing to do. And it's currently on sale. Like my son came up and told me, he's like, hey Dad, that game is on sale right now. You get both the game and the expansion for $60.
Oh. And
afterwards it's going to be $90. I was like, oh, I don't know what to do. Rich, are you always on PC, or do you, is it on a case by case basis?
I am always PC. The only exception really would be if I am going to play with my kids. That means that I may end up picking something up on Switch, but even then it's usually just going to be a double dip. So it's almost always PC first.
Oh, there you have it. Let us know in the comments down below how you make that decision. I'm going to guess that most people are going to say always on PC, but that's a kind of a self-selecting thing, just because a lot of our audience is very PC centric. I'm the weirdo console guy on the show, so that's something to keep in mind. I think we only got time for one of these two stories, and I think that I don't know enough about the EA thing, so I want to talk about these limited edition analog pockets. Russ, you made a great tweet about this that I absolutely 1,000% agree with. Can you just talk about these things, because they look so cool, but I don't know if they're $250 worth of cool.
Right. So the Analog Pocket, it's been out for a while now, but it's been continuously back ordered to the point where, and they're only black and white versions, it's to the point where if you go to try to buy it on their website right now, it just says sold out. And there are a bunch of people who have orders in, have had it for a year plus, and are still waiting for them to actually ship, right? And I got lucky in somebody who had really ordered it very early. They got in contact with me and said, hey, this is not as great as I thought it was going to be. I will sell it to you at cost. And so I was able to get one basically secondhand. So I'm lucky in that I have one of the white models. Then a couple months ago, maybe a month ago, they released a glow-in-the-dark version. And this was like a limited edition run. You could buy it right then and there when they said it was going to be available, and it was going to ship within 2 weeks. I took that as like, okay, well, maybe they just have some extra, like, I don't know, PCBs or whatever, and they want to do something very exclusive and fun. So I thought, like, it was a little bit annoying to me, but at the same time, I figured it's fine. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even want that one. I don't want a glow-in-the-dark handheld, And so, not a big deal. But then, last week or the week before, they released all of these transparent models. Again, super highly limited edition kind of things. Meanwhile, you still can't buy the original one. Those are still there, but they're teasing these new ones, which are $25 more than the others. And again, with this like manufactured like exclusivity thing. And so I was just very annoyed with this. I'm like, how about you fulfill the orders you have? How about you make the other ones available for purchase and then not do this whole FOMO like limited edition run of these transparent models? Because I wanted one of those too, but on principle, I did not even try to order one because I was like, I'm not going to reward them for make these kind of crappy business practices in teasing people about this kind of stuff. And so that's what my tweet was, but with much fewer characters.
yeah, definitely fewer characters, but I like the expansion on it. The thing that drives me crazy is like, I mean, you have one of the original ones, right, Russ?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I have the white one.
Okay, so these things, they're $250 or $225, I guess, for the non-limited edition ones.
Right.
They just I can do all of those things on much cheaper devices. Is there any reason that you can think of that I should get one of these over any of the myriad of other emulation devices that I have outside of hooking Game Boy carts up to the back of it?
Yeah, so it really comes down to how finicky you are about not preservation, but just accuracy. And so, it's FPGA, which means it's hardware level emulation. Mm-hmm. So it's going to have like the exact same sound and graphics and latency that you would expect from the original cartridges and original hardware. And so if that is super important to you, then sure. And it's also a 1440p display, so it's kind of amazing in terms of like crisp pixels and whatnot. But I've always been in this camp where it's like, this thing is amazing, but I am just fine with the cheaper emulation devices, which, by the way, have so many more features in terms of like colorization for Game Boy games, retro achievements, easy save states, stuff like that, and then also a much more intuitive interface. And so, yeah, I'm always on the camp of like those cheaper software emulators, but I do respect what the Analog Pocket brings. But also that $225 like price point is so deceptive as well, because they charge at least $60 in shipping because they use like high-end FedEx shipping and whatnot. And so shipping is super high, then also taxes and whatnot. So it's a $300 system. And then you have to pay an additional $100 for their dock, because it won't work any other way to hook it up to a TV. You have to pay another $100 just to be able to hook it up to a TV. And so, or a Bluetooth controller. It's such a anti-consumer kind of way of going about things that it really just kind of rankles me. But all the same, like, I do respect what it does.
Rich, are you rankled?
I hadn't even considered it. So Analog Pocket is really far off my radar, kind of for the reasons that like Russ described, in terms of I don't care that much about the accuracy of emulation. I'm gonna play on my Steam Deck. I'm gonna play on typically I'm just gonna play on a Windows, some sort of Windows device, whether it's my desktop or something like that for emulation. So I'll just what I find value in is just having one machine that has everything versus having multiple machines that I have to swap to. It's just, availability is the best ability. I said it before. So
which machine is that, Rich?
Well, typically the Steam Deck, but also just my desktop, right? Like I'm always at my desktop, so that counts as well. I have a bunch of ROMs just on a NAS, so I can always just connect to the NAS for access to those. So yeah, that's where I land on that.
Mm-hmm. Carrie is sitting there in front of a wall of retro hardware and stuff. Out of anybody, I would guess that Carrie would care most about accuracy when it came to playing their old games. How do you feel about the not retro pocket? What the hell is it called again? Analog pocket.
So the analog pocket I never bought. I just always thought it was too expensive for what it was. I think the only review video that actually moved the needle for me was one by Dark One X, or John Linneman from Digital Foundry. He actually reviewed it, and along with that 1440 display, they actually cared about the accuracy of how the screen would have operated on the Game Boy itself and how it's dithering and stuff on the display. And it does a very good job of responding, much like how an original Game Boy does. So the Analog Pocket is something that super crazy resolution does a bit more than you need to, but it's a very premium device. And if you were a huge Game Boy fan, this is that. This is a premium Game Boy, is what it comes down to. So that is a very niche case. And while I liked the Game Boy, I was never a big Game Boy person. I actually truthfully liked my Game Gear more. Just because, I played with the battery, the power connector. I never used batteries because it just chewed through those batteries. But the Game Boy I always got pissed off just because, I had to look into like a lamp or something just to like actually play it. So it was always just kind of like I guess for me, especially, like I was just a gearhead even when I was little, and I was like, this should have a color LCD and this and that. So yeah, I like my Game Gear more as over the Game Boy. So I've never been a huge Game Boy fan, even though there's a bunch of Game Boy games that are fantastic. So yeah. I think it comes down to that, but accuracy is actually super, like getting back to that accuracy thing. I have a Vectrix right over there. Seeing a vector display in person is not something that you're going to emulate on a rasterized display. You're not going to get that same impact. The lines that you see on there are like you're looking at an oscilloscope, right? Like you're looking at something that is just these clean lines that are just blazing. It's really something to witness, much like I still have a Virtual Boy, and I think having a Virtual Boy is more important than playing emulated Virtual Boy. I have an N-Gage. I have all these things because playing on the original hardware and getting that is part of the experience. I'm not saying that's necessary for everything. I'm just saying that having the textural understanding of what that was like, you can then go ahead and play ROMs, but still have the core understanding of what that felt like. And CRTs are amazing. CRTs are awesome. So I have CRTs as well. So it's like having that experience is something that I think is very worthwhile. I love the idea of FPGAs in general, not just Analog Pocket, but just FPGAs, and I've been following them for a while. Mostly my FPGA stuff has been looking into recreating Amiga stuff because I missed the Amiga when I was young. Even though I had an Amiga store near me, I was not old enough to really understand the differences between DOS and Amiga. That's a kind of a small little story itself. But yeah, that's where I was looking into. So it's a funny thing, right? Like you look at an FPGA and it's not really clock cycles or anything. You're looking at how many SNES ops it can do or whatever it can configure itself into. It says does one SNES op per whatever. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of FPGAs. I think accuracy is important. However, I didn't get an Analog Pocket. I thought it was too expensive, even though I can appreciate what it is.
Well, speaking of retro stuff and CRTs and all that stuff, Russ, during this entire show, he's had a game running on the CRT behind him. I'm going to play a little clip from that game so the audio listeners can get a taste of what's going on behind him, and leave a comment down below if you know what game this is. Here we go. I gotta say that song is so good. It's Genesis as hell. I absolutely love that. So I'm just gonna stop it real quick. Rich, Carrie and I knew what it was just by looking at it, but you never said one way or the other if you recognized what game was being played. Do you know what it is?
No. Does it start with an S?
Nope.
No. Let me duck down so you can see it clearly.
No, I don't know what that is.
It's not going to work unless you're talking, because the editor won't cut over to you. Carrie, go ahead. Tell everybody what game is playing.
That's Golden Axe, my friend.
Yeah, that is Golden Axe. Did you ever play that, Rich?
I did, but I came to the Genesis late. Like, it was the SNES was already, like, I had my fill of the SNES. I was about to get a PlayStation, but I got a Genesis instead. So I came to it late. I enjoyed Sonic 2, and I enjoyed Shinobi. That's about it.
Yeah, I loved Golden Axe. Golden Axe to me was the beat 'em up game for the Genesis. I know a lot of people love Streets of Rage and whatnot, but I loved Golden Axe just because it had like those little magic potions. You could have the dragon come out, and if you got enough of them. I really loved that. One neat little fact is that what's playing on my CRT is the arcade version. It's not the Genesis version, although I gave Bill the Genesis music because I'm running Batacera on like a mini PC that's running into the CRT, and for some reason that Genesis version, the ROM that I had, just wasn't playing, and so I was like, screw it. No one's going to tell the difference, but I still had to come clean and let you guys know that it is different.
Well, the music was absolutely from the Genesis version because it sounded like that Genesis sound chip, which was I know that people like the Super Nintendo sound chip better, like that it was a better sound chip. I'm using air quotes, but I have a more of an affinity for the sound of the Sega Genesis, and I have no idea why. It's just how I feel. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode, everybody. Russ, tell people about your next video real quick.
So next video is going to be on the Loki Zero. So that's the very budget handheld PC, $250. So it can run Linux. And so I've been spending the past 2 weeks getting a Linux operating system running on it called Jealous, and it's retro gaming focused, emulation focused, and it improves the performance significantly to the point where for $250, we've got a handheld that can reliably play just about every Wii U game, which is pretty incredible. So.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's really impressive. Rich, what's your next video?
I'll give you my last. So my last one is why everyone loves Valve and hates Epic. And it's basically an exploration as to how Valve cultivated the extreme loyalty that they have. I feel like it's a loyalty that I haven't seen anywhere else in gaming. So I kind of speak to that.
Awesome. And I watched that video. I think it's probably your best video yet. I really, really liked that. Carrie, what are you working on, or what was your most recent video?
So I have a bunch of videos that I'm trying to work at the same time and trying to work through it. My INEO review video is probably still a few days away, but I'm probably going to I want to finish up my review on FSR3 and how that's running on handhelds and the impact that's going to have, as well as AFMF, which is on AMD's drivers, and how they're not yet available on 7840U devices.
Awesome. And I just put out a video on Friday, basically a tier list of not handhelds themselves, but handheld features of the Steam Deck and ROG Ally. So it's not really a video about which one I like more. It's about, I like the thumbsticks on this more, and the D-pad on this more, and the that kind of thing. And you can find all of those videos linked in the description down below. But that's going to do it for this episode of the NerdNest podcast. Thank you guys for hanging out with us, and we will all see you next time. Stay rad, everybody.